Hello again, I'm Emily Fraser. I'm here to provide a brief intro to each individual chapter of Gallery, the tabletop RPG that I'm currently developing, so that you kind of have some ideas of what to expect from every chapter. This is chapter 2, and this is kind of the intro slash orientation to the overall setting. So immediately following the prelude, we get into this longer narrative following a man who is kind of explaining the setting from within the setting. The benefit of this and the reason why it's done both in this part of the book and in several other parts of the book is because Gallery is not really a Lord of the Rings slash D&D slash kind of traditional fantasy setting where people have a automatic mental grounding of what they're expected to see. It's a pretty unique area. It's got a lot of kind of metaphor built into it. It's got a lot of really surreal elements that are involved, and without actually grounding you in the setting and the context, you're not really going to know where to go in it. So several parts of this book do include narratives, typically at the beginning of every chapter, that will help orient you contextually for what it is that you're about to read. So when a new concept is introduced, you will have some context for how that concept actually works within the setting, so that you can kind of use that as a guide. Obviously, things can be adjusted depending on how you narrate, but the thought here is that rather than just kind of giving you a handful of context and no texture with which to kind of understand how they work, we're instead going to ground you in several different narratives so that you can see how this is going to apply to your game and how this is going to apply to your story. Also, how it was sort of like thought to be used in my head, which can sometimes be useful. I'm fully aware that occasionally things get read that are written and people are just kind of in a completely different headspace and they misinterpret it, or I don't communicate it well enough. Nobody says I'm perfect. So the thought here is by adding additional texture, you end up with a more robust piece. The one here at the beginning is certainly the longest one in the book. Typically, they're only 2 pages, so there'll just be a spread that you opened up, and it's like a short story in there that will contextualize whatever it is you're about to read in the chapter. This one actually is a long conversation wherein this character is talking to a new muse, a new character who has just shown up in Gallery, which is the world that this takes place in, and is orienting them. We actually call them guides in book, and it's speaking to a phenomena in which a muse kind of meets another muse rather early in their journey, which happens fairly commonly. They tend to attract each other, just sort of fall into the same places. So there's typically, not always, but typically someone around who can give them a little bit of direction so they're not completely lost when they first find up. This story goes on for many pages and covers a bit of a welcoming, and then begins to go through individual concepts within the story itself. So it covers the canvases, which are like individual worlds. It covers medium, which is sort of the magic or substance of the universe. Motif and manifest, these are aspects of character creation. It has to do with a little bit with how you look and how you manifest your abilities. Painted worlds, these are actually dreams that you can travel into. Muses, which are the characters themselves, so this is where that concept is actually introduced and described in a bit more detail. Patrons, that was the voice that we heard in the prelude, and also a type of being that you will encounter relatively regularly throughout your journey in Gallery. Patrons are quasi-godlike beings, but they're not specifically deities of any sort. They just are mighty and terrifying, and these sort of like astral intelligences that have their own sort of motivations and their own abilities. This is a common theme through the stuff that I've made before. We have a lot of these available in Hicks and Draconis as well, but these ones behave a little bit differently. Patrons are a lot more approachable. They are things that do speak. They have representatives that will actually converse with you. And they have more mappable, I would say, motivations than some of the more, astral beings that are available in Hicks and Draconis. They're certainly not a thing to be trusted, but they are a thing whose motivations you can actually map and whose reactions are pretty reliable. So this is something that you will interact with somewhat regularly throughout the game. We talk about time. In this particular game, you actually can originate from any time in the canvas, which is our world, and come in from different aspects of history in different locations. Travel, ways that you kind of get around. The overall population in the space, and a topic review at the end that just kind of goes over basic concepts that were written in it before we hop into the next chapter. I'm going to go back here really quick and hit a few of these in finer detail. Obviously, there's going to be artwork and design implemented in the space. In each one of these different pages, you're going to see a thing that says Beyond the Frame. This is actually a direct note from me regarding my design elements in this, so ways to interpret what you're being told, because the narration is being done in character, and that's not always useful. So anything that I feel like needs greater exposition is covered in these little asides. There's also a narrative aside on each page that kind of narrates the scene that you're viewing the way that a guide would narrate it. So if the guide or the GM or however you want to phrase it is talking to you about this particular scene that you're in, they would use this note to narrate it. And that's again to try to contextualize the way that I would expect a scene to run. We actually do this twice in this game, or in this game book rather. It's done here, and it's also done again later on in an example of your first 3 sessions, again to help orient players. So here there's another Beyond the Frame. Medium is a thing that I think we'll probably get into in greater detail later, but it is a core component of the setting. Medium is the substance that thoughts are made of. It is a kind of physical manifestation of creativity and expression. It is the magic of the setting for sure, but more than that, it is a kind of like physical output of your ability to kind of project yourself. And every being that can think produces medium to some degree. Humans all do it, animals all do it to some degree. Like your sapience has to do with this. This is sort of a representation of deliberate. This is a representation of deliberate. This is a representation of deliberate manipulation of self, right? So it's expression. Obviously, most animals don't necessarily have the ability to project in that way. But humans can all do it. They don't have to be muses to do it. So if everybody can do it, where's it all go? It gets covered in here, but typically it's going into dreams, it's going into various ideas, it's kind of getting sapped away by patrons in the canvas so that we can't actually see it here in our world, the thing called the canvas in this setting. And that's a play dynamic that will actually show up in the rules as well. When you're in Gallery, the kind of opposite world, not opposite, but like adjacent world that is the fantasy world of this setting, you have the ability to use medium in a wide variety of ways. You can make sketches with it, which allow you to do things like cast spells. You can use it to do all kinds of different abilities, but when you're in the canvas, because you can travel back and forth between them, you're actually not able to access those sketches anymore. Your medium just doesn't channel into sketches. It gets kind of sapped away. And that's because the patrons actually have the canvas locked down pretty hard. It's their collective sort of experiment. So they don't necessarily allow that kind of manipulation to take place here. But you do still have access to medium in other ways because as a muse, you are made of the stuff. That is the primary difference between the muses and here we go. The muses and the humans in this space. Your character begins as what they assume is a human, but what is actually a collection of medium that has kind of been taught to believe that it is. And that is not a thing that is specifically known to anyone. That is just kind of what happens. It's the collective flotsam of the universe. All of these thoughts and wills and ideas and hopes and dreams that get into dreams and daydreams and plans that never get done and novels that never get written. All of these kind of bits of inspiration that never find a home all coagulate into or congeal into actual beings called muses. And those beings will kind of attempt to be what is around them because they are without direction. So many of them think that they're human. Some even think that they're animals. There are even some that think that they're objects until they have this kind of moment of awakening where they kind of discover that things that they have felt their whole lives that were calling them away from that existence were actually true. And they can embark on this kind of new journey as a muse, which brings them into Gallery and into the rest of the game. So as a being made of medium, called a notion in this world, you can actually manipulate yourself directly in various fun and creative ways that will work in the canvas. So you still get access to kind of these personal powers when you're in the canvas area. You just can't project them the same way you can while you're in gallery.